Hey everyone, it's Harry from Web322. Hopefully you know that by now. If you found the lecture about the web servers a lot to take in, I totally get it, but you can go back and watch the lecture again on YouTube. It's an hour and a half. I know it's kind of long. You can watch it on 2x. I think it's important to understand how, the DNS and stuff works before you just jump into making a web server on your own, or at least partial. However, I know that it's so much information, so I'm gonna make like a crash course video just so you have the basics because you need it for the assignment and the upcoming test. So I'm gonna open a brand new Visual Studio Code. Okay, so here we are. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna open up a new folder, and I always choose, wherever I'm doing projects on my Mac, it's in a projects folder. Then I'll go to Seneca, Web322, and you can make a new folder. Same in Windows, you could right click and make a new one. And let's say I was working on my assignment, I would probably want to make it Web322 underscore assignment. And I open the folder. So you should have this blank VS Code with no files or folders in the directory. Go up to terminal, click new terminal. I'm pretty sure it's the same in Windows. And this should open up your console terminal command prompt, I'm calling it terminal, in the same folder that you created the folder on the left here. If you do an ls or a dir in Windows, there should be nothing in here, right? Next thing you want to do is you want to initialize your project. So npm init, and it's going to ask you a bunch of questions. Package name. Typically, I leave it as whatever the folder is called. If it's in brackets, that's just the default it's going to give it. Version you can leave at 1. Description, you're going to want to put in whatever we're doing. So if it's the assignment, make sure you put what the project's about. So later on you can understand, oh, this is what it was about. So web page, whatever. I'll let you guys do it. I'm going to leave mine blank. Entry point. So this is the file that we're going to run for the main project. By default, it's index.js. I think the assignment asks you to make server.js, or I think the Vercel guide asks you to make server.js. I don't care which you use as long as it's consistent. I'm going to make mine index, test command, nothing, git repo. Don't put in your git repo here. We don't need this right now. Keywords, don't put anything in. Put your name in, and license can be this ISC. Just press enter, then press enter again. When you do this, you should get the package.json. I'm just going to say JSON from now on up here, right? That's number one. Number two, well, I guess no, maybe we won't number them. The next thing you have to do is you want to install Express, right? So we're going to use npm, the node package manager. Again, watch the other lecture to get the gist of this. npm install Express. This is going to update our package JSON file with the dependencies for Express and also give you the node modules folder that downloads all the dependencies. If you don't understand what this node modules folder is, you don't understand what package.json, please go watch that lecture video. And I'm going to say it a couple times. It is super important you understand what these are. But again, this is just a crash course how to get it operating real quick. Okay, so I've done the npm init and npm install express. Then I'm going to create a file. Whatever you called your main, you're going to make the file called it. Same. So main index.js, I'm calling mine index.js. Then to just test everything works, do a console.log inside of the index.js. I'll make it a bit bigger for you. And put hello world. Right? And then you can just run it, type node index.js, or if it's server.js, that's what you would type, but node index.js. If you get hello world, that means your project's set up properly, and we can move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step, it's pretty simple. You can follow the code on web322.ca, and it's right around here. In fact, I'll just copy and paste this for now. And if you remember in class, I said we're going to get the Express module. I don't like when comments are on the side. And then we're going to, it says obtain the app object, but we're going to instantiate the app object. And then I'm just going to set up a port. And don't worry too much about this. We'll come back to environment variables shortly. And they picked 8080. It doesn't really matter. I'll pick 3000. And then we're going to start the server, right? So if you remember, we're starting a server on our own laptop. So there's two parts to this: the server plus the client, which will be the browser. So when you run this for the first time, node index.js, it'll say server listing on 3000. Go to your browser. Where the heck is my browser? Right here. We'll split this into two. And go to localhost 3000. And you should see this cannot get slash. If you get this, you're doing well. Your server is running. And this app.listen, it's running forever. And it's just listening for requests. And when I say request, if you recall from the lecture, I have a client, and then on the other side I have the server, and that request is the line that goes across to the server. So if you got this far, you're good. So the next part in here, we want to set up a route for index, right? So index, this slash is typically called index. And they don't put in localhost 3000/index. They just assume that the blank one is called index. So now what we want to do is add in a simple route for index. Notice that we don't put index at the end of this. It's just assumed that it's index because it's the first one. And we have to create a route for this. So get index, or we can say route for index. And we do app.get because it's a get. And we want index, which is just the slash, or it's known as whack sometimes. We'll put request and response, and then the arrow function. And right, so these are functions. This request fills up with information that's coming from the web browser. We don't use this right now, but we will later. And this response is what we're going to send back to the web browser. So the response will be send hello world in this case. This just should output hello world to our browser over here. Don't forget, you have to save your file. I saw a lot of people in class, they didn't save their file and they restarted their server. It's not going to show any changes, right? So save your file, then restart your server, and then refresh your page. You should get the hello world on the page. This isn't valid HTML, right? And it makes it really difficult if we have to type in HTML here. So what we want to do is actually create an HTML file that we're going to send instead of just sending hello world. Again, watch the lecture video for the details on MVC, but this is the layout on how to do it. Actually, before we do that, I think this was difficult to understand in class. If I want to make another route for another web page, like for example, let's say I wanted a contact page, I would just copy this get for index, right? The exact same code. I'll zoom it out just a little bit. And this time, I don't want to have the route for index because I already have it, but I want to make it for contact. And you'd leave the slash in there because we're going to have a slash up here. So this is the route for contact. And I'm going to just say hello contact. So you can make as many as you want, right? You can make one for about. Just make sure your code is updated. Right, so if I save this, restart the server, and I go contact, right, I get the hello contact. And then if I change this to about, hello about, let's say I want a route for, I don't know, articles, and then slash recent. So we could say hello articles recent. And notice this is a totally different route. Restart the web server, and I go to articles/recent. You can see right here. So every time we make a page, in this case, for now, you have to make a new route for it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to making this a little bit simpler. I just have the index one. Always have your app.listen at the end of your project. So don't do something like this, right? Because our app.listen should be the last thing to run. The other thing is, if you have app.listen twice, I saw this a couple times in class, it's going to run your server twice, and then you're going to get an error. So if I run this, I get an error that says port 3000 is already in use, and that's because it's running right here. right? So don't have these open twice, or don't have that in there twice. Okay. So now we want to send a file. And what we want to do is follow, a standard MVC. So we're going to make a folder called views. Make sure your folder is correct, because eventually these folders are going to matter. You're going to have many more folders. So your server or index.js should be in the root of your project, and then have your views folder. And inside of views, I'm going to make index.html. Regular HTML file. You should all be used to these. If you're in VSCode and you want to make a quick HTML page, just use exclamation mark and press enter, and it should give you a really, really basic HTML page. And I'll do header and just call it h1. Over here, I'm going to use res.sendFile. Oops. Res.sendFile. And I want to send the file that's in the views folder. So I'm going to use views/index.html. Now, before you go testing this, make sure you watch the rest of this video, because, again, watch the real lecture, but for the reason, but Node uses absolute path. So we have to tell this, our send file, exactly where this file is located. So one of the ways you could do that is to right click on this file, open in Finder or whatever it's called, and then find the actual, the path that it's in. So mine would be something like /users/HarryScanlon/documents project. I don't know, whatever it is. But this doesn't work, because eventually you're going to send your code to me, or you're going to send it to some website or server, and they're not going to have the same file structure as you. So to get the absolute path, we have to import something that Node gave us called path, and it looks like this: require path. And this will actually give us the root folder, and so I don't have to go look it up. This is an object, just so you know, so I have to use path.join, and this is going to append the user/HarryScanlon/ so on to the views index. But there's one last thing we need, and it's the directory name. So I know this sounds like a lot, but this is technically a string. So I can do something like HTML path equals this, and then I can just drop HTML path inside of send file. Right, so it's 2 lines of code. If this works, over here I should get, in my index, I should get this h1 from index. Remember, save your file, restart the server, and I'll refresh, and there it is. If you right click, go view page source, we now have our HTML. Same would go if you made another one, right? So if I make another view called about, I would call it about.html, make the actual HTML for it, about. Then I would take this route for about and change the comment to about. Inside of here, right, we have to tell, we're programming this, so we have to tell it, I would like to have a route called about. And I want to send the about HTML file. So I save this, restart the server. And now if I go to, about, I get the about page. A couple things to note, and this is in the other lecture. Our program doesn't know that you're sending index, right? It's just saying whatever route you want. You can make this whatever you want. And it doesn't know or care that this is called index. And this also doesn't care that it's called about. I can actually send the index back for this if I want. And if I restart the server and go to about, it's actually sending me the index page. These don't have to match. In fact, it doesn't even have to say HTML. We can send whatever we want back. But Express will send it back as HTML, and our browser will recognize it as HTML. But I just want you to know, we can name these whatever we want. As a developer that you want to keep organized, typically if you make a route for something, you have the equivalent HTML file as the same name. So if I made another route called whatever, typically I would make the file called whatever. And this is just a programming um, nicety, I don't know, I guess, for other developers, right? Because if two of us are working on this project and I'm like, oh, I'm in the route for whatever, I should automatically assume there's a matching one in the view, but it doesn't have to. Imagine you had thousands of these and this was just called some crap, right? And I went looking for this. It doesn't make sense, but I can do it. It will work. There's no issue with it working, but it just doesn't make sense. So that's why we call them the same. But Node doesn't really care. The server doesn't care. So the Vercel guide also has the GitHub guide in it. And basically, you want to commit your code to your local Git repo first, and then make a GitHub account, push it to the GitHub account, then make a Vercel account and follow the instructions in Vercel on how to link them all together. I'll show you really quick how to do this, but you're probably going to want to go back and research it because some of the stuff in here I've already done. Like I've already set up an account and I've already done some of this stuff. You're going to have to do that as well. But this is kind of the final outcome. So first thing is first, you don't want to submit the node modules folder to Git. So there's a special file called .git ignore, and you have to put the dot in front of it. And it's like an invisible file. And inside of this file, all you have to write is node modules. And this will, when we check in our code or commit it, it's going to ignore the node modules folder. It's super important because you only have limited Git space, and there's no reason to have these files. So that's number one. The next thing you want to do is type in terminal git initiate. Kind of like npm initiate, this initializes your Git repo on your own computer. So we're going to type that. And then you'll see it says initialized empty Git repo. You might see some stuff pop up because there is some Git source control stuff in VSCode, but it can get pretty confusing if you go over here. So stay in terminal, and you should use these terminal commands. So for the very first time, we want to commit or add all of our files to the repo. So we're going to go git add -a, and this is going to add every file, readme, package.json, index, the views, and not the node modules to our Git repo. And then we're going to commit it, so it's like saving. So I'm going to do git commit, and we do -am and then a quote, and we can write a comment. So we want to comment whatever we did as a change when we, do this commit. So for example, this is the first time, or first project setup, first commit, I don't know, something like this for project. And that's it. So you'll see here's the files that we committed to our Git repo. Now this isn't on GitHub yet. This is just inside of our own Git repo. And if you want to see this, you can actually open up the folder that we're working in. And if you turn on view hidden files, you'll actually see a directory called Git. And inside of here it's like the database, but it's the folders of all of the changes in your on your files, right? So this is not connected to GitHub or anything. It's just located right here. And there's your Git Ignore as well. Once you've done this, go over to GitHub. If you don't have an account, oh, there's me and my dog, nice. If you don't have an account yet, sign up for one. I don't care if you use your school one or use your personal one. That doesn't bother me. But you do have to make a new repository. So I don't know what your GitHub would look like if you make a new account, but if you click on your name or your profile image and then go to your repositories, you might see something like this. Click on new and make a brand new one. So Web 322 assignment. And I'm calling it this because I can't remember if it asks you to do it in the assignment. We can go look, but basically we're going to be working out of this Git repo for the rest of the semester. So don't call it assignment 1 because it's going to eventually turn into assignment 6, right? So I'm going to say Web 222 assignment. You can even call it Web 322, whatever. So I'm going to call it assignment, and put in the description, our project for Web 322. Make it a private repo, and don't click anything else because we already have one. So we're just making a space on this server, on this GitHub server, and we don't want to actually initialize our project. So we're going to say create repository. And then it gives you two options. So it says a quick setup, which we don't want to use right now. It says, or create a new repository on the command line. So we've done most of this already. See where it says echo web 322 assignment to readme.md. Well, we already have a readme.md, so we don't need to do this. Then it says to get initiate, which we've done. We did the add, we did the first commit. What you want to do is start right here. Git branch -m main. This just makes sure that we're on the main branch in Git. So let's put it over here so we can read it. Oops. Sorry. There we go. So Git branch -m main. And if you want to see your branches, you can just do git branch and it will show you. See, there's the main right there. I always hate doing that. It's Q to get out of there. And then we want to add, they call it the origin, but we want to add the URL that GitHub has given us for this project, which is this git remote add origin and then the URL that they give you. So we'll just paste this in here. And hopefully this works. Looks like it could. And now the next step is we want to send our entire project to GitHub. So that's this git push command. And for the first time, we're going to use git push -u origin main. So this sends, it says, hey Git, we're going to push some files from our main branch to origin. So if this works, it's going to look like this. Most people will get stuck here or stopped here, and it's where you're going to have to go back and figure out what the error is. I can't really help you with this, so make sure you're reading the error. 90% of the time, it's an issue with your credentials. I didn't have to do it because my project's already set up and the credentials are already in my system. But most likely it is something to do with this git configure. So make sure you fix this, figure out what it is. Post in the general chat if you get an error. Maybe someone can help you. Maybe I can help you. But if it worked, if you refresh this Git repo over here on the right, you should now see all of your code, including your readme.md file, your views folder, the index.js, package.json. You should not see the node modules. If node modules in there, you're going to lose marks. So make sure you delete it. Okay, and on this note of adding and deleting, do not use the GitHub interface for adding files. Like I think there's a little plus, create new file, upload files. If you use these, I promise you, you will lose a lot of marks because this will keep your Git repos out of sync. And you want to keep your Git repo on your actual computer in sync with the one that's not on your computer. If you add new files over here on GitHub, you will have to download them to your Git over here, which becomes a major problem. You have to do this thing called merge. It's a real pain in the butt. We don't want to deal with that right now. So do all of your changes over here on your own system and then send them to GitHub. Do not use the create file or upload a file. Don't upload a zip file. Don't do any of that. Make sure that you're doing your commits over here. And it's really, really simple. So now that this is all hooked up, you should have no problem for the rest of the semester updating your files. For example, I want to make a new index, or I want to make a new route for contact. So I'm going to just do what we did, 20 minutes ago. Create a route for contact, add it here, add the file, add the view, and H1 contact. Right, so on my system, I have it set up so I can kind of see these changes. So it's expecting a change in there, and this file as well. But Git doesn't know there's a change yet because we haven't told it. So I'm going to type, again, git add -a. And this -a is capitalized for all. So this git add -a is going to add any new files. So the new file I added was contact.html. And then I'm going to do git commit -am. This allows us to comment, and I'm going to say added route for contact. Right, and you can see 3 files changed, create mode, there's the new file that we have, and it would also commit the index.js file. And the last thing I have to do is git push. And I don't have to do that git push you origin. You can if you want, but git push should just work as well. And you should see it uploads it over to Git. So to show you, I'm going to refresh this page and click on views, and you should see I have contact and index. And that's how you kind of know it works. The other thing is if you go over here and click on commits, you can see I have 2 commits. And there's my comment, first commit for project, and it gives you a little, you can see all the code for it. And then there's added route for contact, and I can click on this to see, what changes were added and everything like this. If you want to get back, just go to the top. Notice there's my README file, right? So make sure you're using Git properly. If you have questions about it, let me know. If you get stuck with it, again, let me know. What I would do is to make sure that you know how to commit or how to add, commit, and push. Because every time you do like a major change to your software, you should be committing it to Git. Even if you don't upload it to GitHub, you should still do the update, right? So if, for example, I was like, oh, I don't want contact, I want it to be about, right? And I do this change, and I rename it to about, then I would be done that, and I would do git add -a, even though there's no new files, or I guess there would be, commit am, changed contact to about, then git push. And you'll see if I refresh the page over here, we'll have 3 commits now as opposed to the 2. Where the heck did it go? Right here, 3 commits, and you'll see change to about. Right, so that takes care of GitHub. Okay, so for the last trick of the evening, I guess, you're going to want to make a Vercel account. And you'll probably get something that looks like this or similar. And what you want to do is import project, connect your GitHub. I've already done this. You can see hscanlan send, and you should only see, or you should have your private repos here. If you don't, go to adjust GitHub app permissions. And sometimes if you have an ad blocker, this won't pop up. So turn your ad blocker off and scroll down, select repository, and find whatever the repo is. In my case, it's Web322 assignments. I've already added it. And you're going to want to click import. But I screwed up because in the assignment, it says to ignore adding a Vercel.json file. And I did this because previously you did not have to add this Vercel.json file, but you actually have to add it in order for Vercel to know that this is a node project. We didn't have to do this before because there was actually a node selection, but we have to do this now. So I'm going to update the assignment and get rid of this, but you do have to add this. So go to web322.ca, click on simple web server, go down to adding a JSON Vercel, and take this code, copy it, make a new file in the main project called Vercel.json, paste in the code, and make sure you edit this to whatever you're using. So the edit that I have to make is that the source should be an index.js on this one, and down here destination should be index.js. Save the file, then do your git add -a, git commit -am vercel.json file, and then git push. When you do that, you can go back to Vercel, click on import, leave everything as it is. It should say other on framework, and then click deploy. If this works okay, you should get some sparklers, I think. You'll see in 1 second. I don't know, yeah, there it is. And it should show you your web page. I already changed mine from index to, and you should see something like this in your dashboard. Now, I just noticed something. I stopped the recording and I did some checks here. But Vercel, it's a newer company and they're constantly changing how their software works. That's why we had to add the Vercel.json file, which I previously thought we didn't have to add. But I noticed that Vercel actually does this thing called caching, and it makes their web server go faster. We can talk about it in the future. But if you notice that if you make a change in your code, which it's now relatively easy, right? I can add some ipsum text like this, and save my website, and then push it git -a git commit -am ipsum git push. Now that I've hooked it all up, Vercel is automatically going to check for changes and launch your site again. So if I actually refresh this page, you can see duration 14 seconds, or sorry, 14 seconds ago, 4 minutes ago, no, 14s, 4 minutes ago. Hold on, let's see if it updates. It should update. I might have overdone it. Oh wait, am I in the right thing? Here we go. Yeah, created just now, right? So I pushed a new version, and you can see there's the text in their preview. But if I click on the domain that they gave me, it's actually the previous page that I created, which is kind of weird. But if I click on their deployment one and go to this page, you can actually see the text has been updated. What I understand or what I read is Vercel caches this. So do me a favor, when you update your README file, put all three of these domains into your README file instead of just the one that's right here. So you can actually just put all three in, and then that I'll be able to check all three of them. And even if Vercel has cached it, I can still find your site. And it might be weird. You might be like, oh, it's not updated. Well, check the non-production version, which is this last one, and it should be the most up-to-dated one. So again, we'll just test this theory out. Let's go back to my index, and I'll delete the ipsum text, and let's just change the name completely. We'll just put in garbage. Git add -a, git commit am garbage, git push, git push, and then back to Vercel. Close these down. Go to web. Yeah, here it is. So it's building right now, right? I didn't have to do anything, which is kind of cool. It's called garbage. And if I click on this, yeah, it should show the site, yeah, which it does. But if I click on the actual domain one, it has my old deployment. But if I click on the latest one, it has the newest one. So they do this to save server processing, because this is the live web page that you could send out to your friends or your family, like if you had a resume. And this one is like the development one. Anyway, so you might not see your changes immediately on Vercel, but eventually they'll come on there. So just note that. Okay, so that's pretty much it, and that's basically how you do the assignment. I'm gonna update this so it's a little bit easier to read. Don't forget to add that Vercel.json file, and that's about it. All right. Hopefully that helped. See you later.